All right, welcome everybody to Unquestionable with CalvinSmith. I'm your host, Calvin, and I have an amazing guest with me today. I have Mr. Anthony Magnabosco with me. But before I get into what Anthony is here for and kind of why I wanted him on the show, I wanted to let you guys know that I have this awesome shirt printed up, and I have one that I have not worn. It just has my logo on the front of it, and on my Instagram page at Unquestionable Podcast, you can actually enter a giveaway and win that free shirt. And so, yeah, feel free to check me out on Instagram if you want a shirt. And unfortunately, it's United States only. I don't have any international shipping at the moment. So sorry if you're listening in Australia and the UK. I know I have quite a few listeners over there, but US only for right now. But that's all I had to talk about, to start off with. I want to get into my guest for today, Anthony Magnabosco. So welcome, Anthony.
Thank you very much for having me on. Yeah, shipping internationally is always a challenge. We just had this thing where we're developing this course for Street Epistemology. We had people from around the world volunteer to help us test one of the modules, and we sent them some shirts. And it's always a little tricky to get that stuff international. You have to fill out all these extra forms and stuff. It's almost just easier to say, sorry, we're just not doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not like I have a gigantic following or anything right now. If I had a ton of people from overseas or something asking for it, then I would figure something out. But
sure.
Unfortunately, at the moment I'm still working on it, still working on the listenership. But so yeah, cool. Anthony, you're actually the executive director of Street Epistemology International. Am I correct?
Yeah, it's an organization we started about 2 years ago in response to the developing interest in street epistemology, which I'm sure we'll get into what the heck that is for your viewers. And we wanted to give people a way to support what we're doing financially and then get those funds to other people who are interested in spreading the word about this method. So yeah, it's been going pretty good.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'd like to think you guys are doing a really good job as to what your organization is doing and what you guys are trying to promote, and the critical thinking aspects. Like I was talking to you just before we started recording, I found you about a year ago, but I've been hearing about you ever since I kind of, because a couple of years ago, I wasn't sure really what I believed and why I believed as far as religion goes. And plus I was kind of falling down this rabbit hole of thinking like Hillary Clinton was a reptile. And, putting my tinfoil hat on thinking that they're like everybody was aliens. I was falling deep in this hole. And so I wasn't sure what I believed in religiously. So I decided to pick up a Bible and, read it as best as I could. And, I did skip over a couple parts, but I'm actually reading over those right now. And I had been hearing about you like through the atheist experience, and I saw a couple episodes that you were on with the atheist experience, and then I figured I would just check you out, and I would look up your name on Google, and you popped up right there with your YouTube channel. And I've been watching your videos of you interacting with these people, and it's interesting because you're not interacting with them in like a debate format. You're not coming at them aggressively. And I thought that was really interesting because a lot of the things that I was seeing on the internet, as far as, people asking about what people believed and why, people were being confrontational about it. And I thought your approach to it was something I hadn't seen before.
Yeah. Isn't it funny though, that like you would think that respectful, productive conversations would be the norm. Right. But they're not, especially as the topic gets more and more contentious. So if it is about a God belief or a political claim or some social issue, we tend to argue about it, debate, ridicule. So to see it early on like that, there weren't a lot of examples online of that type of interaction where it was also productive.
Right.
That's, and you didn't mention that specifically, but that usually is also a component too, is like, it seems like we're making more progress with the person who holds the claim when you explore it with them in this manner of the street epistemology approach. Right. Exactly. So there's something to it. Like there's something drastically different compared to even the call-in shows on AXP. Yeah. Those can get very heated and argumentative. And if you try to replicate that with a family or a friend or a stranger on the street, it's going to probably go the same way. It's going to be ugly and you're going to probably feel like crap afterwards. Exactly. So I was really drawn to this approach because it was seemingly effective and I felt better afterwards. And my conversation partners seemed to feel good about it too. Yeah. So that's a big sell. I think, of this approach compared to the other ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I actually recently picked up Peter Boghossian's book, A Manual for Creating Atheists. And it's actually sitting behind me here, and I'm about halfway through it right now. And
What do you think of it?
it's really good, like very
Oh yeah.
insightful. Like literally from page one, I've been hooked on it. It's got a lot of really good information. It's easy to read. I would recommend it to really anyone who is interested in street epistemology, what it was, how it's kind of developed from when the book has been written too.
What it was. Yeah, I'm glad you added that clarifier, because I think it's changed a lot since then. And that book really appealed to me when I read it. I was inspired to go out and start having talks where I was using that approach.
Yeah.
And then putting them on my channel.
Right.
He's since put out another book that I think has picked up where that, well, not just where that book left off, but what has transpired in the years between the first book and the second book. We've developed the approach quite a bit. The actual practitioners of the approach, including the author, I think recognize, wow, this is drastically different.
Yeah.
And he has another book out now. Came out 2 years ago now, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I didn't know he had another book out, but yeah, I mean, I've noticed that just reading through that, it's like I see a lot of what he's writing about in, things that you do on your channel, and what other people are doing, like Cordial Curiosity and, Let's Chat and all these other street epistemology channels. But it's not, it's like Peter has, a very, I guess, primitive version of it written down.
But, it's primitive, admittedly, and it's probably a little harsher.
Yeah.
So if you tried to do, like, I literally tried to mimic his style when I first started going out, and I was having difficulty. And then when you stick with it, and then you share your examples online, and people can tell you other things to try, then you've got development. We're cooking with gas. And then, like, as you mentioned, other people get into it. You have these different styles. We're all, we communicate with each other too. We hang out, we do review videos together. So there's this collaborative community spirit that's permeating this approach, that's moving it forward in a really productive way.
Yeah. And I mean, I really enjoy everyone's approach to it, because I really want to know why people believe these things, because I know why I believed in, aliens built the pyramids and, all this other really crazy claims. But I want to know why other people think that, are they thinking it for the same reason that I was thinking it for?
That's good that you have the curiosity part is really good. So if this is like part inquiry and empathy,
right?
Street epistemology, I think, is the merging of those two things. So, like, you do want to be genuinely interested. Why does this person think that there are lizard people on this planet?
Right.
Well, how did they get there? Because I want to explore those steps and maybe adopt the view if it's true. But if it's not true and you haven't quite thought it out, I want to, because I want to help you, because I have empathy for you, I want to respectfully challenge your view at a pace that you're comfortable with, to help you reflect on it, to say, maybe I don't have good reasons for thinking this, and maybe I should back off my confidence on it.
Right.
So you kind of have to have those two things. You can do it. You can use SE to just go out and crush people's views of reality if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the empathetic component to it, then something's lacking, something's missing, I think, in my view.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think what's really interesting about street epistemology too is that anyone can do it. Anyone can practice it, and people are probably practicing it, not even realizing that they're doing it. You don't have to be, an atheist, or, you don't have to not believe in lizard people to, do street epistemology. That anyone can do it. A Christian can do it. A Muslim can do it. And I think that's really awesome about it.
Yeah. Think of a parent who's hearing their kid cry in the other room, and they go to check on him, and the child's afraid of a monster under the bed.
Yeah.
How would you engage with that child? You would probably be using something along the lines of street epistemology, a merging of inquiry and compassion.
Right. Yeah.
And helping the child reflect on it, and calming them down, and giving them something to rationally think about on their own. Right. Yeah. You really can't convince them. They have to do the convincing themselves, I think. But you can facilitate change through inquiry and empathy. And that's what street epistemology is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we've talked a lot about what exactly, you do as far as on your channel, but I don't think we've necessarily explained for people who aren't familiar at all with street epistemology exactly what it is, where did Street Epistemology start? And did you start Street Epistemology International, or was that around before you started practicing?
No, let me take it from the beginning. So the
Okay.
start of, well, arguably the start of Street Epistemology could be argued to originate from the Socratic method, the stories of Plato with Socrates and so forth.
Yep.
And then a philosophy professor, Peter Boghossian, wrote that first book, A Manual for Creating Atheists.
Right.
I read that, started going out and recording talks.
Okay.
A community developed, or there was a fledgling community, but it really started blowing up once videos, I think, came online. That started driving people into the communities. That led to the innovations that you see today and that are currently happening today. There are literally innovations happening right now that you will start seeing in future videos, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking personally, but well, maybe in a way I am. I've got a few videos that might show changes or growth.
Yeah.
And then Boghossian wrote a second book. I think the nonprofit formed around the same time that his second book came out, but they're completely independent.
Okay.
The nonprofit is not associated with Boghossian or his books or anything. It was started by myself and a few other practitioners who wanted to legitimize what we're doing.
Gotcha.
And try to get some real money behind what we're doing too, because we want people to scientifically study this.
Oh,
so we don't want to just say, well, just look at the
Yeah.
videos. We want to have data to show this is what
Yeah,
is probably happening in a
definitely.
person's brain and so forth. And that's kind of been the path so far.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's really interesting because I kind of started off when I started watching you, because you were the first Street Epistemology, person I had, watched was you. And then I found all these other channels, and I thought it was really interesting how your videos evolved from how they started, because I can audibly hear your voice is different when you're talking to people nowadays, rather than back then. It's so welcoming. And I think that's the big thing, is that you're not coming off, confrontational, and you're able to read the body language really well, which I'm trying to work on my body language reading. It's really interesting to watch your videos for sure, especially nowadays.
Thank you. Yeah, I do think there's been a lot of growth, not just in terms of my own personal growth and my interactions, but with the technique itself.
Yes.
So sometimes I'll listen. Sometimes I even listen to a recent conversation and I can hear the anxiety in my voice, and I'm trying to account for that and control for that. But if you go to the other videos, like it's tense.
Yeah.
But you can watch something today. It's like, it's pretty chill. Wow. Like they're going slow and methodical, and they're joking around even.
Yeah.
And they're not even really worried about the time limits anymore. And it's just this nice kind of cool, organic, semi-organic, because it's, I'm inviting people to stop and talk and surface a claim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so. Something that I try to do, because I would hope in the near future, I want to try to get some more equipment straightened around so that I can actually start practicing Street Epistemology, in like public parks and stuff like that I'm around. But what kind of advice would you have for me as someone who is pretty much fresh out of the gate and really doesn't have much experience behind them other than Facebook groups and cordial debates like that?
And maybe watching the videos itself.
Right.
Well, the resources that are available today for people like yourself are really good. So there's an app that's a little dated, quite honestly, but it's called Atheos.
Yeah.
There's a course that we're working on, but it won't be ready maybe for another 6 months to a year, unfortunately.
Okay.
But probably the best thing is videos, and immerse yourself in the community and figure, watch what people are doing, but take notes, but don't copy exactly.
Yeah.
Like you might watch a couple of videos and say, oh, okay, I see they're kind of establishing the claim, and then they're getting to a confidence level, and then maybe they're identifying reasons and methods. You can follow that. Like that's a really useful guide.
Yeah.
But don't be so don't copy too closely where you lose your own identity and you're sacrificing your authenticity for it.
Right. So don't come
good.
off as like a robot.
Yeah.
Right.
Because while your conversation partner may not detect it, people who watch the video will, including SE practitioners themselves, are like, why wasn't he just a little bit more natural and general, and kind of find his own style? So
Right.
that would be my advice is like copy to a point to get you comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
But at some point, take the training wheels off and just be yourself and do it.
Right. And I mean, it's funny that you say that, because actually when I first started watching your videos and I was like, man, I should try this out. I should try doing this because it seems like really interesting. And the fact that anyone can do it, I'm going to try it out. And so I got my notepad out and I started taking notes on like your videos and, Cordial Curiosity videos and all these other channels. And I was actually writing down like word for word what you guys were saying. And what I sometimes do is I'll get on the, I don't know if you've heard the chat site Omegle,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I have.
I actually go on there and you can actually have really interesting conversations with people through that chat site. So I've actually done street epistemology over Omegle with people. And this is kind of the
Fantastic.
only face-to-face type of interactions that I'm having with anybody. And
That's
it's
cool.
really interesting conversations that I have with people. But it's, it's really interesting. I guess it's different than if they're right in front of you talking to you.
Well, you have a bigger challenge as opposed to like being on the street, like with
Yeah.
Omegle, if I'm saying that right. You're randomly served up with somebody, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken. And is there a time limit too? Is
No,
there a
there's no
pressure?
time limit.
Okay.
Some people have videos, some people don't. Honestly, there's a lot of inappropriate stuff on there, so you kind of have to
You
sift.
got to weed out the noise,
Yeah, you
right?
gotta
To get
you gotta sift that out. And there's obviously people that you'll get a couple sentences out and you'll kind of feel like you're getting a feel for them, then they can just hit skip at any point and
yeah. See
cut
that I
off
think
the
that would be the biggest
conversation.
challenge is finding somebody who's willing to have a good talk with you and open up,
Yeah,
because SE is more about the questions. It's
right.
about how you're interacting with the person.
Yeah. And what I've been
So
doing is, what's interesting on Omegle is that you can actually add tags on there. So you can add like
great.
Bible or God or something, and it'll find people that also have that tag. So that's what I've been doing, is I've been
Oh, that's
putting in
good.
tags like Bible, Jesus, or aliens, UFO, and matching up with these people with similar interests. And then they're like, hey, you want to talk about God? And I'm like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And
That's
those are honestly
fantastic.
the best conversations that I've had. I've had like 2-3 hour long conversations with people that I wish I would have recorded. But
Can you? Are you able to?
I probably could. I could probably rig it up now. A couple weeks ago, I really wasn't able to. I just recently got a new computer, to where I'm
Okay.
actually able to like record Zoom interviews like we are now.
Nice.
But
Well,
yeah,
let me get back to the advice. So
yeah,
rather than taking notes on my interactions or Reed's or Tyrone's, Eddie's, Nathan, whoever's uploading videos, consistently lately, it might be better to record your own conversations if you're allowed to do so, and then
yeah,
take notes on your own interactions,
right,
because you have the expertise now because you've watched the videos and now you're doing it. Now it's time to be introspective of your own interactions and
right.
maybe even be brave enough to put them out there for other people to critique them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I definitely. I mean, I even tried to implement street epistemology in some of my previous episodes, which I don't know if you've checked any of them out, but like a good episode where I
I'm
tried to.
sorry.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. You're feel free to check them out anytime though, but they're everywhere. But on the episode that I have with Debbie Solaris, she believed that she was contacted by extraterrestrials, and she's able to contact them through the Akashic records. And so I tried to implement some street epistemology with her, and why she believed what she believed, and what exactly she believed, and if she thought it was true. And I even did a couple thought experiments with her, like I did the Ferrari example. I love the Ferrari example. That's a lot of fun. And I just kind of tried to practice my street epistemology with her, and I think her conversation was probably the best conversation I've had as far as
Really?
epistemology goes. So yeah, check that out if you're interested. And I mean, maybe getting some critique
Yeah.
on where I could have done better on that.
Is it a YouTube video?
Yeah, it's on YouTube and it's on
Okay, cool.
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere it's
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the reason I ask is because we have a playlist. You may have seen it where so there's a playlist now. Whenever we come across a video that has anything to do with SE, whether it's a video example of a conversation, or if it's a criticism, or if there's an oblique reference to it on some other podcast, we usually
Right.
dump that into this playlist.
Okay.
And we can throw your video in there too.
Yeah. Feel free
because
to
we
check it out.
want new practitioners of SE to be exposed to the broader community so that you can get that crucial feedback for getting better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's the plan. And once I get some more equipment going on, I want to do a couple episodes of me bringing my equipment out and recording conversations with people in public. and doing
Nice.
that some. I just need a couple more pieces of equipment. Plus, we're in the process of moving. That's why I don't have anything on my walls right now besides my guitar. So yeah, so we're in the process of moving. So once we get that all situated, then maybe I can start looking into, you know, getting a couple more pieces of equipment. And yeah, it's interesting. I really, I mean, I hope maybe before the snow starts coming, because I live in Michigan myself. So I hope before the snow comes, I can, you know, get out and talk to a couple people. But if not, then I guess that gives me a couple, you know, 6 months of snow to to study up some more.
In-person SE is really, it's so rewarding. It takes some courage to get out there and do it, because even, you know, if I had to go out tomorrow to do it, my heart would probably still be racing a little bit, like, oh, okay, here we go, I got to stop a stranger, and you know, I don't like doing this. I don't like when they do it to
weird.
me.
Yeah,
it's so weird. But if you want to practice and get a talk with a real person, I don't know of any other way except maybe what Reed might do, where he set Reed and Dolly and how they set the table out.
Yeah.
Sort of a disinviting presence. And then, what are you doing over there? Right. People usually approach them rather than them flag people down.
Yeah, exactly.
The cameras, you know, you could practice with just audio, like maybe your cell phone or some, you know, audio capture device.
Right.
Because sometimes the cameras can really amp up your own anxiety and your conversation partners, because now there's this whole other dynamic of being recorded video, you know, like visually. But whatever, like start with what you're comfortable with and just build up to it. Like say, you know, all day today, I'm just going to ask people if they have time for a short chat. I'm going to figure out what their claim is, and then maybe ask them their level of confidence, and then what would change their mind. And then I'm going to end it. You know, I'm going to get in and get out, and just to get comfortable with it. But if you're ready to go and you're like, I can do this, no problem. You know, more power to you. Go for it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm anxious to get out there and start doing it, but you know, that's things that I want to be able to record myself, so I can actually look back on my body language and my interlocutor's body language, and actually, you know, really get a good feel for what's going on. And
the video, as far as a learning aid, the video is way better than just audio.
Yeah.
But if the video is amps things up too much, you can always scale it back to just video, to just audio.
Definitely. Yeah. Have you ever had a negative reaction from someone? Like, have you ever, like, I don't know, had someone like try to fist fight you or something from something you've said, or anything really offensive?
Earlier back in the day, like when I was still learning SE and I was debating with people, and if they said like something that I disagreed with, I would argue with them.
Right.
That, plus also there were so many things that I wasn't doing right. Like I was foisting conversations on people who didn't want to have a conversation with me in many instances, like the street preachers. I took it as a sign, well, they're out here to converse with people, therefore I'm going to converse with you, whether you like it or not. And that's not a good starting point for SE. So it's good for a debate, there was some aggression that came back to me, but it wasn't really that serious.
Yeah.
I've had maybe once in a while, people don't like you. They don't like seeing you out there, especially if you go frequently, whether it's a trail or the university. There are some people who are just annoyed because they suspect that they know what you're up to, or maybe they know that I'm doing street epistemology, and that's that technique that comes from that book that turns everybody into atheists, and therefore he's a bad person. So I've had some people threaten me nicely, you know, like you'll pay, you know, that type of stuff. Like when you die, you'll pay, and you get that kind of stuff. But that was really very unusual.
Yeah.
But it could happen. So when you do go out in public, make sure that there are other people around, where if you do get in a jam, you can maybe wave somebody over to help you out.
Yeah, definitely. So why, I mean, that's the number thing with street epistemology. I think a lot of people have a big misconception about it, and that like we're, you know, just out there to deconvert everybody or something, and that we're just out there to turn everybody atheist. And I mean, the title of the book, A Manual for Creating Atheists, I mean, that's a scary title. And you know, like when I got it in the mail and I opened it up, my wife went, "Oh my God, what is that?" As soon as I was funny. Like, "I promise, it's about street epistemology. I promise."
I know. I don't think, even to this day, I don't let that book lay around, honestly, because it's, you know, it's such an inflammatory title, and it's so potentially misleading.
Right.
Because as we know, SE could be used for so many other things besides exploring that claim. Now, it's deadly for religious claims. Let's face it. Like the title kind of lives up to the claim.
Right.
because you could use street epistemology to deconvert somebody. You literally could do it if you wanted to, because it helps people realize that they may not have good reasons for their high level of confidence that something is true. But that applies to all types of claims, not just the religious one. So I'm sensitive to the inflammatory nature of the title. However, I'm also somewhat sympathetic to it because it's accurate. Like somebody could use SE for this purpose.
Right.
But the solution to it, the solution to preventing you from decreasing your confidence in your claim is surfacing good reasons and methods for thinking something is true. So ultimately, it's really not my fault that you have a belief that maybe you can't back up and it's susceptible to this approach.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of torn on it, but the title is problematic because it has the potential, and I think it has, dissuade people from learning about it because they think it's only for this one thing.
Right. Yes.
And it's unfortunate because theists could benefit greatly from learning this approach.
I agree.
And I think the title's really done a disservice, but he's written a second book. I'll give you the title since you didn't know it, but it's called How to Have Impossible Conversations.
Okay.
And it's much more broad. It's not, I don't even think they mention theist or atheist once in that book. I don't even think they mentioned street epistemology more than maybe once in that book.
Interesting.
So it's very broad. It's meant for this broader application of skepticism and critical thinking through a dialectical, which is probably how it should have been presented in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and what's interesting is I actually just read past this part in A Manual for Creating Atheists, where for the longest time I was calling myself an agnostic atheist, and because I wasn't sure if I believed in a God or not, but I was, I didn't have sufficient evidence to believe in a God, but I wasn't sure, wasn't 100% sure. So I was calling myself an agnostic atheist. And I actually just read, I've been feeling weird about that label. And so luckily in A Manual for Creating Atheists, he has like a whole chapter on whether you should call yourself an agnostic or atheist or a theist. And I think after reading that chapter, I think I'm gonna have to drop that label of agnostic atheist. I mean, he makes a really good argument that I'm not agnostic to the belief of Santa Claus, so I'm not Santa Claus agnostic.
I see. Yeah, the word agnostic could have different meanings. It sounds like he may have been using it as undecided or open-minded, maybe.
Right.
So if it's been a while since I've read that book, and I didn't even remember that part was in there, to be honest. I'll have to refresh my memory.
Pretty close to the beginning. It's, so you may not remember it.
Oh, okay.
It's within like the first 50, 60 pages. So you might not remember it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
But so do you do debates or anything like that? Or do you just do the street epistemology?
I don't do debates. I've been invited every once in a while. Somebody will invite me to debate somebody on this topic. I don't want to have any part of it because I don't think it's useful. And I think it's misleading for people who watch debates to think that's how I need to interact with the people in my life on this topic. So debates can do there's value in it. If you watch two people arguing and they're each trying to convince each other, and then you have thousands of people who watch that can passively weigh both positions and then come to their own conclusions, that's awesome. But I see also the liability of it. And because what I'm doing is advocating for a different approach, I think it might be problematic if I were to suddenly start debating people.
Right. Fair.
It might be like, I think people might be confused. Why is it? Yeah. And also I'm not good at it. Like I'm not really good for advocating for my position. I'm much better at asking people, well, how did you become so sure that it's true?
Yeah.
So I sort of playing to my strengths a little bit by going the SE route.
That's kind of where I'm landing too. I'm kind of in the same boat, because when I first picked up the Bible, and by the end of it, I decided I didn't believe anything in it and that I was atheist. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, I wasn't.
Debates. We're talking about debating.
Debates. Sorry, I totally had a brain fart there. But yeah, I realized that I wasn't super good at debating either. I mean, I did the whole Omegle thing. And once again, you can go on Omegle and you can, find people that are totally willing to debate with you. They're totally willing. Like they're
probably expecting it.
Yeah.
I would imagine most people there are expecting. That's what happens on the street.
Yeah.
People are expecting an argumentative debate, and you have to do a lot of damage control. Like, no, this isn't a gotcha video. I'm not here to debate you. If we
Yes.
were debating, I would look at it as a failure. I don't want to argue. The last thing I
Right.
want is for either of our heart rates to get out of control.
Yeah.
I want to respectfully explore this with you to see how you became convinced. Can we do that? And
Yeah.
people are still kind of skeptical when you lay it out that way because they've never seen it before in most cases.
Right. Yeah.
But once you get a couple minutes into it, that's what's kind of cool about the timer too. Like can we set a timer for 5 minutes? How many times has the timer gone off? And neither of us has really noticed it or
Yeah.
acknowledged it. We just
Almost
keep
every
going
time.
because we're having such a good time. And
Yeah.
if we were debating and the timer went off, more than likely we'd be noticing and be like, yeah, I guess this is time to end it, right?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that's why I realized that I was so bad at, debating that I thought that this approach would be a lot better for a more productive conversation. So even nowadays, I'm not listening to as many debates, because I'm not a fan of the interactions and that, the poop thrown in between the interlocutor. I'm not a fan of it. I would rather listen.
For an applause line to make you look better and feel better that you dominated your competition. What the that is not helping anybody.
Yeah. And that's why
except
I think
maybe your own ego.
Yeah, Street Epistemology is a way better approach. And I love the Street Epistemology podcast. I've listened probably every single
no kidding.
The like 500 episodes.
Wow. But well, it's funny. We're so swamped with content and other projects. You probably noticed that we don't upload as many episodes. Yeah. Like it's sporadic. You might get 2 in a week, and then sometimes you get 1 in a month or 1 every 2 months. So it's just we're reaching this point in the community where we have so many people like yourself creating content, good stuff that we want to share, and we're swamped with other larger tasks like the development of the course, the foundation of the nonprofit, the trying to find a neuroscientist to study what we're doing, and thousands, well, not thousands, but many, many other things in between. And we're just like pulled in all these different directions. I guess what would be really cool is if somebody started a competing SE podcast. Maybe it's time to have a second SE podcast out there.
Yeah. And I mean, what's funny is that that's kind of Street Epistemology is kind of the inspiration for my podcast. That's why it's called Unquestionable with CalvinSmith, because I don't know if you're familiar with, ancient lost high technology or anything like that. It's kind of a niche that.
What kind of ancient loss?
Yeah, ancient lost high technology. So I don't know if you're familiar with people like Graham Hancock. They're kind of big name, like Graham Hancock, or Randall Carlson is another big name now.
Sorry.
No, you're all right. So it's hard to kind of throw into a paragraph, but essentially it's not necessarily believing that aliens created the pyramids or these other amazing structures around the world, such as like the Sphinx or Pumapunku or Tiwanaku or anything like that around the world. It's more so there's evidence leading to the fact that it could be some sort of technology that we don't have yet, or that we haven't discovered yet, but ancient Egyptians had it for building the pyramids and we are unaware of it. Not anything like they were levitating stuff with their minds. Or
it still works within the physics as we know it, but it was just
they had some sort of technology, and it could be something primitive that we are unaware of. It's just the fact that the way that the modern narrative is trying to explain it doesn't make sense, even to a lot of Egyptologists that study it. And it's kind of an uprising kind of thing. A lot of people are, a lot of YouTubers, people like Uncharted X is a big YouTube channel. And I had a guy named Brian Forrester on my podcast, who's been studying it for the past 50 years, and he lives in Peru and studies it. If you're interested in it, you're welcome to check out a couple of my other previous podcasts where I kind of talked about.
That sounds interesting. I was into ancient aliens for like maybe a year, 10 years or so ago. I was like really into it. Like I love the imagination. But if there's an effort to try to figure out how they accomplish these things using materials and resources that were available to them at that time, that was not otherworldly perhaps, and it was like within their means to do it, like that would be a phenomenal, fascinating thing to discover.
And that's the thing, is that I don't watch Ancient Aliens, and I've said on the show before that I don't recommend anyone watch Ancient Aliens.
I stopped watching it.
They say everything is because of aliens, and it's really absurd. So I don't suggest anyone watch Ancient Aliens, and I'm not at all, one, like you said, it's something practical that they had. things like evidence of tube drills being used, but there's no tube drills laying around. But there's, I mean, within these granite rocks, you know, granite is 7 out of
maybe
10
there was
on
an animal
parts.
back at that time that had like a tusk that was really good in the type of stone in that area, and it was like it was revolutionary, and it allowed them to cut these large slabs, and then they figured some creative way of moving these things. And
and that's what I'm suggesting, is that, you know, nothing is alien. I'm not suggesting anything alien or paranormal. It's, you know, I'm suggesting they just built something that we don't.
How does that tie into your podcast though? Are you trying to merge that with SE?
Because I like to question the modern narrative. So I'll pick up like things like, I just did an episode on the Sphinx where I totally broke down the modern narrative of the Sphinx and what common consensus in Egyptology would say how the Sphinx is built. And then I kind of I questioned it, I guess you could say, and I you know, picked up evidence from other independent researchers who are saying the contrary to. So the common consensus is that the Sphinx is 4,500 years old and was built by Pharaoh Chephren in the Old Kingdom of Egypt. That's common consensus, but evidence is showing from people like Robert Schoch, who is a well-renowned geologist, and people like Randall Carlson, who's also a geologist. They've actually flown out to the Sphinx and shown evidence of these vertical fissures on the inside of the Sphinx enclosure that had to be done by significant precipitation over thousands of years. And that could have only been done if the Sphinx was 9,000 plus years old. And that's kind of what it's suggesting. So I kind of question the modern narrative. And then in the meantime, I guess you could say, I have guests on where I kind of do a little bit of straight epistemology, and I ask them, you know, why do you believe, you know, you contacted aliens? Why do you believe in Bigfoot? You know, who's another guy I had on? I had
you ever have Mick West on, or some people like Mick West is really into the whole UFO phenomena that seems to be happening?
Heard of him. Yeah, I have.
He's more of a debunker, but it might be interesting to talk to the people who are purporting that these are alien craft.
Right.
And maybe applying some of the same techniques that you're using on that.
Definitely.
That's good. Good.
So,
I wish you the best of luck with your podcast.
Podcast is, you know, I like to question things. And I mean, even if I don't like to have, you know, definitive facts, I guess you could say. You know, I always feel like we should question everything. That's kind of my saying, is that we should question everything. You know, there's evidence for, you know, Egyptology saying that, you know, the Sphinx is 4,500 years old, but I believe that there's stronger evidence suggesting that it's older than that. And
and wouldn't it be amazing to like almost definitively conclude that that was the case, that it really is much older?
And that's the thing, is that, you know, Egyptology isn't open to that. You know, if anyone suggests that, you're automatically labeled as a pseudoscientist.
See, that mentality.
And that's my big problem, is that we need to be more open about it. And I mean, if it sounds absurd, maybe you should test it to see how absurd it is. You know, no one's ever built a Sphinx or a pyramid to prove otherwise with the tools that we have right now. So, I mean, I don't, you know, it's just a big what if for me. So that's the whole kind of basis of my podcast. I like to ask why things are the way they are. You know, if we've really been here for as long as we've been here for, we've been around for longer. But yeah, so
sounds good.
A big problem for me when I'm trying to do street epistemology is coming up with questions.
Really?
Sometimes I need to actually write out questions. Like I even have right in front of me a couple of questions that I wanted to be sure to ask you, but it's like I have to like literally write down this baseline of what I'm saying. Otherwise I will just completely lose track of what I'm talking about. So how do you just, I don't know, keep on track and keep these really insightful questions going? Do you have like a method that you do or practice?
Well, no, I don't really have a method, but the questions kind of just come to you naturally the more that you do it. And uploading your videos to YouTube, for example, and then literally going through, like, I almost always read the comments, and YouTube is pretty good about sending me an email too. So they don't do it for every comment, thankfully, but I get enough of them where I read them. And a lot of times I get suggestions like, why didn't you ask this? Or it would have been really interesting if you proposed this thought experiment at that moment.
Right.
So I try to remember that. Now there are times sometimes where I'll jot down on my whiteboard, like, ask about doubt, or let's talk
Okay.
about. So rather than like asking a person to surface a claim, ask if they've ever disagreed with somebody on something. Like try that as your entry point. So sometimes
Okay.
I'll jot down a little note here or there, but I'm so immersed in this because of my own content and then doing interviews like this and people out of the blue hitting me with things. There's a constant inflow of ideas. So
Yeah.
I have this huge repository to draw from, which I guess gives me an advantage and maybe makes it look easy to the observer. Like, how the hell is he coming up with these questions? I mean, I wish I could
Right.
say that they're all mine.
Yeah.
My advice is like, just get comfortable doing it, pay attention to the criticisms, and submerge yourself or immerse yourself in the street epistemology community and figure out what people are getting stuck on, and then pay attention to the solutions that people are offering.
Yeah.
And if let's
Okay.
say you're in the heat, it's easy to say now as we're talking about it like
Yeah. Yeah.
obliquely, but when you're in the conversation, if you're stuck, one thing that you could try is you could say, I'm not really sure what to ask you next. I want to ask you another question, but
Okay.
I'm struggling to formulate it.
Right. Okay.
Is there a question that you were thinking that I would be asking you that I haven't?
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Try that. And maybe as they're sputtering out a question, because they're probably caught off guard by your query, because who asks their conversation partner what
Yeah.
question you should ask them? And
Right.
sometimes as they're stumbling around for a question you can ask, it dawns on you the perfect question to ask. And you can
Okay.
entertain the one that
Clever.
they proposed, or you can then work in your question that you just thought of. So maybe
Okay.
try
Yeah.
that.
That's a great idea. Yeah. I think I might have to implement that. That's really
Yeah.
interesting. I mean, a big thing for me is I'm passionate about, positive atheism, promoting, free thinking and critical thinking. And I'm also, I'm open to a debate. If someone comes up to me and starts throwing Bible verses at me, I'm going to throw Bible verses back at you. Probably not ones that you'll like though. And that's how I have a hard time getting past that, just saying, sorry, I don't want to have a conversation with you, rather than, coming at them.
Yeah.
I have a hard time.
I
I'm
understand
still
the
working on that.
I understand the tendency to want to contest the things that you're being told, especially if you're sure that you know exactly what verse would be
Right.
the compliment or the
Yeah.
whatever.
Not to say I'm proud of it, or that I'm
No, I
boasting
get
it
it.
or anything, but it's just something that I'm like, God, really, how
Here's
uh
what you could try to do. You could literally say, now back in the day when I was arguing with people and not doing street epistemology, I may have said something like, but in this verse it says this. However, I'm trying to
okay.
resist saying that. So therefore
Yeah.
you get it off. Like you are able to reveal the contradiction maybe, or the competing verse.
Right.
You could do that. Now that will probably consume rapport and result in a more defensive person.
Yeah.
Another thing you can try is you can say, if we were to discover a verse that said something contradictory to what you said, what would your reaction be? How would you react to it? Now they may
Okay.
say, I'd be really intrigued to hear that. Like
Yeah.
that would probably really shake me up if I heard it.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you can say, well, I think I have something that's close. Would you like to hear it?
Definitely.
Sure. Okay, go for it. Right. It's completely different than just slamming it into their face without any preparation whatsoever.
Yeah. And I think that's really cool about what you do too, is that you don't come off saying that you're an atheist right out of the bat. You don't tell them your beliefs, when they're approaching you, or when you're
That's kind of
approaching them.
controversial, though. Some people are like, you should be saying that you disagree with them on their claim right from the
I don't
start.
know. I think the approach of not giving your stance, I think it's a lot more open. That way people aren't going into it saying this person's going to try to, debunk what I'm saying.
I understand that, but if they were to learn later, and they often do learn later, then it could leave people with a bad taste in their mouth. Like, why didn't you disclose this really important
Yeah.
information? Like, I would have been much
Fair.
more. Who knows how they would have reacted? I've had people open up even more when I've revealed that I disagree with their position, because maybe
Okay.
they've been entertaining it, or they're curious about why people do, just like I might be curious about why they think it. They may be curious about why I think it. And now they're excited to finally talk to someone who's being polite and open and respectful. Like, ooh, I've always wanted to talk to like a nice atheist who,
Yeah.
And it could open them up even more. And sometimes people even say, I've really been questioning this, and it's nice to run into somebody who thinks this, because
Definitely.
I'm surrounded by everyone who thinks otherwise. So you never know what the reaction is going to be. I wanted to finish the part about revealing the part about the Bible or whatever,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
holy
Go
book,
ahead.
like the contradictory thing. You can ask them, what do you think would happen if you were to see that? They may be really welcoming because they were curious about it. But it could also shut them down. Or they may say, listen, you can give me all the verses in this holy book that show that I'm wrong, and it's not going to mean anything to
Mhm.
me, because
Right.
I know I have the truth because I had a miracle. So you could be giving people things to show that they're wrong and debating with them, and throwing up barriers to their own progress, whatever. That has no bearing at all on their confidence. That's another consideration, is make sure, like, check in with them. If you were to see this, would it impact your confidence in any way? And if they say no, then you don't have to argue with them about verses. You can move on to another reason that's really supporting their view.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah, definitely.
meet them where they're at. But in order to find out where they're at, you need to ask them where they're at.
Yeah.
How would you
Okay.
react if I showed you this verse?
Right.
Uh, it would be profound. To it wouldn't bother me one bit, because I know that I have the truth, because I have all these other reasons.
Right. Yeah. Has your beliefs on anything ever changed by conversations that you've had with people? Have you ever
Sure.
had a switch in beliefs?
Switch in beliefs.
Well, so I guess has anyone ever said anything that convinced you, I
Oh,
guess, otherwise by whatever you were talking
not on
about?
the God claim. No, I mean,
Okay.
today, all the reasons and methods that people provide for thinking that there's a higher power or the supernatural is real. We can expand it to ghosts,
Yeah.
gods, spirits, you know, karma, like a supernatural karma or whatever.
Right.
There doesn't seem to be any really good reason for thinking any of that is true.
Yeah.
I'm still open to it, but like,
So far,
it
no
seems like
thanks.
it's almost seemed like that's a
Yeah.
done deal. Like there's just no backing for it.
Right.
But I'm still open to it. I'm open to one day encountering the theist who can adequately explain how they became convinced that this is true.
Yeah.
And maybe they have some good backing for it. But
Yeah.
I've changed my mind a little bit on gun control, open carry,
Okay.
and probably a few other things.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another thing too, is that like street epistemology can be used for things other than beliefs necessarily, in religious aspects. It can be used in
Oh, sure. We can
political things too.
we can use street epistemology to explore whether street epistemology is ethical or
Yeah.
effective.
Very cool. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's really interesting. And I mean, that's another thing that I kind of struggle with, is that I'm not a huge politics guy. So like I don't know a whole lot about politics. So I have a hard time coming up with questions to ask as far as politics go, because I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
Well, remember, with SE, you don't really need to know too much about it,
Right.
because they're the ones who seem to know about it and have taken a position on it.
Yeah.
So honestly, like, the work, a lot of the work is on the person who's making the claim, and the SEer, the questioner, just needs to listen
Yeah.
and reflect back, and then ask questions to kind of keep driving down to, well, how did you determine that that's true? If you kind of keep that in mind, that framework in mind, it takes the pressure off of you. And people love to be listened to, because you're really paying close attention to them, because you want to formulate good questions. And then you're not really on the hot seat, unless they turn around and say, okay, buddy, where do you stand on this?
Yeah. Then I'm like,
Now it's like, well, I'm probably, I'm not quite you can handle that however way that you want. But let me ask you this. How would you like to be questioned about your political views? Would you like somebody to debate and argue with you? Or would you prefer that somebody use an SE approach with your own views?
Exactly. Yeah. So I'd much rather someone use an SE approach, because if they're coming off
Me too.
aggressively, like, because I mean, if I'm being honest, a couple of my family members are very aggressive. Certain previous president, lovers, but they're hard to have conversations with, because of they come off aggressive and they want me to come back aggressive. But
Yeah. And
yeah,
then if you don't come back aggressive, people start to wonder, why are you not matching me in terms of your passion?
right.
Like, do you just not care? Are you manipulating me because you're using some weird technique? I've heard that. Like,
Yeah.
you're interacting with me much differently than I expected, or that you've done in the past. Therefore, you must be up to something sneaky.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, that could happen.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've been struggling with lately, because my way of thinking just from a year ago, before I found you, my way of thinking and questioning things has really changed from how it was just a year ago. And a lot of people I've noticed that I know personally are thrown off by that, because they notice I kind of have a different approach
Yeah.
lately. So I've kind of noticed
Yeah.
that.
I bet that maybe they're used to saying something that you in the past would readily agree to, and maybe
Yes.
today you're more like,
Yeah, 'cause, I mean,
and
a
even
year
just
ago-
that one little switch just changes everything for their perspective. They're
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
wow.
2 years ago, I was posting all over Facebook about how aliens are real, and I was writing whole, 7-page articles on how great aliens were walking around, and how Hillary Clinton was a reptile, and how the Earth is probably flat, and all these really, really interesting things I was writing. And now, I mean, frankly, I don't believe any of it now. And that was just 2 years ago. And I look back, I actually converted my old Facebook page, where I used to write all these alien articles. I converted it to my new podcast page, so I can actually look back still on those articles.
Brilliant.
And they're still there, and I can still look at myself
Brilliant.
and say, wow, look at
Good for you. See, I would think a weaker person would just delete it and start over.
Yeah.
But I think it's awesome that you left it out there to show your growth.
Yeah. So, I mean, people can still go read them. They're still open to read. There's probably 15, 20, maybe even 30 articles on Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, UFOs, everything you can think of. And I mean, I've completely changed my stance from when I wrote those articles. And
Yeah. And here's the beauty of it too, is that you could still go back to believing one of those things if there's a good reason to do so.
Exactly. Yeah.
You don't have to close yourself off to thinking that God is real or not. Exactly. You can say, I don't know. Like, I'm intrigued. I'd love to think that this was true. I'd love to think that Bigfoot was real. Yeah. But until there's a good reason for thinking so, I'm going to have to lower my confidence accordingly.
Right. Exactly. And
that's wonderful that you made that journey. That's really incredible. Because
and you
see that.
Yeah. And I think publicly. It's interesting because I have a hard time. I'm on like a ton of Facebook groups too. And I'm on like all these, still on UFO groups and flat earth groups and stuff. And I have a hard time having conversations with people on there because I feel like it has something to do to where, they don't hear that tone of voice, that friendly tone of voice. They just see the words on the page and, interpret it how they want. But I feel like it's hard to have SE conversations just through texts on Facebook forums.
I would use text to find people and then go to Omegle or video chat like we're doing.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Or in person, ideally.
Right.
Because so much more is transmitted when you're able to see the person.
Right. I mean, not to say I haven't had some really insightful conversations with people over, some Christian websites and stuff like that.
It can happen.
Conversations, but not very often. But yeah, Anthony, I had a really awesome talk with you. I mean,
Me too.
I really appreciate you coming on. Before I let you go, is there anything that you wanted to plug in and tell the audience about before I let you go?
Well, sure. The big thing that we're working on at the moment is a course to teach people how to do street epistemology. We have many of the practitioners that you see online who are uploading stuff are on this team. We have folks from around the world developing a course to teach people how to do this. It's going to be massive. Definitely. It's going to be like 22 modules. Each module might be anywhere between 20 to 30 pages. So we're talking very big, but useful.
If you need any help with it, you have my number. I'm
really?
To help.
Be careful what you wish for, or solicit, because we are looking for people to help us out.
Okay.
There's also a Discord server that's quite active. Yep. And there's a Reddit. The Reddit is actually quite active too.
Oh, really? I didn't know
there's
that.
There's a Reddit for, it's like 11,000 people last time I checked. It's insane.
Huh.
So this is blowing up, but what we're really looking for is for people to learn the approach, practice it, put it into play, and start encouraging other people to use it in their daily interactions, because it's seemingly effective. People who participated in it seem to enjoy it. And it's kind of what we need at this moment in our culture. We're talking past each other and things are getting bad. And I think this is a solution for fixing that, but we have the tool. We just need people to start picking it up and using it.
Right.
And that's where we're at right now. So,
Yeah,
yeah, thank you
definitely.
for having me on your show, and good luck with your podcast too. It sounds really interesting.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anthony. I really do appreciate it. And once again, if you need my help with anything, you have my number. I'm totally open to
Okay.
help you out with street epistemology, and, hopefully get this thing taken off and maybe get a couple more people who listen to this podcast interested in it. And anyone who's interested can check out Street Epistemology. Is it .com or .org for Street Epistemology International?
Streetepistemology.com and then streetepistemologyinternational.org. But I think you can do either or and they redirect. So
Gotcha.
yeah, you'll
Awesome.
find it.
All right. Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate it. Everyone check out Street Epistemology and check out Anthony's YouTube channel. And I'll talk to you guys later. Bye, Anthony. Thank you so much.
Bye.